Hi, I'm Mike Clayson,
And I'm Walter Von Uni.
and I thought today, Walter, that considering that the Great Shakeout is coming this month, October 17th, that it might be a good time to talk about earthquakes and the process of getting ready for them. And I know that there's been a lot out there recently about how to react after the event, and then also some lists that are going out about things you might want to buy to prepare yourself, and so that's good. Those are all good things. But I'd like to move forward, actually backwards or more earlier, to the first step in the process, and that is resilience. Are you resilient? Are you going to be able to have the personal armor and the fortitude and the foresight in order to survive something like this and be okay mentally as you go through the process? So,
But basically, at least from my perspective, that is realizing that something can happen and not just saying, oh, maybe somewhere in the future, but saying, okay, I got to be ready for this mentally and also with the preparedness that comes with it. But knowing that something can happen as it has happened to you
right,
and has happened to me
right.
in the past, where I really wasn't, I'd say, resilient
You weren't
to,
thinking about it.
I wasn't thinking about
This
it.
wasn't on your list of things
I
to do.
wasn't thinking about
Yeah,
anything
right.
there. And then our house burned down in a fire in 2017 in Santa Rosa, the Tubbs fire, and in all the fires that were going on at that time, over 8,900 homes were burned to the ground, and ours was one of them. And in the middle of the night, my wife got a phone call and said, "Hey, get out now because the fire is coming." And so we didn't know. We ran around the house. There's no electricity. Wind is blowing 60 miles an hour. And we went outside, and there's a police car that goes by. And basically, all you could hear quietly, because the wind was so loud, look, look, evacuate. And we're going, oh, geez, okay, now. If we hadn't woken up, we would be toast, and literally toast, because we're lucky to be here. But we're running around the house, and what do we take? First of all, where do you find a flashlight? We're looking, we found them, and now we're saying, okay, what do we do? What do we do? And you did this, you had this with an earthquake.
Right. I mean, between the two of us, we've had several earthquakes. We've both experienced the same
Hmm.
earthquakes through the years, and of course, your house burnt down, and our house was threatened with fire right across the street, and then that winter we were evacuated for flooding. So we've had more than enough experiences, way
Yeah.
too many
Oh, yeah.
of these things, where it hits and changes your whole life. One, you get up in the morning thinking you're going to be doing one thing, and then by the afternoon you are doing something completely different that
All right.
you never expected you to be doing, like trying to figure out how you're going to find things in the dark because you don't have any power.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I wanted to talk about resilience because to me it's really the first step, and that is coming to the realization that hey, we live in a place that is susceptible to natural disasters and maybe man-made disasters too, for that matter. And so the odds are good that nothing's going to happen, but there's still the chance. And if something does happen, it's going to be catastrophic, and we need to be prepared to survive that. Uh, and so, I mean, some of the things that we talked about, you and I talked about before, is um, like how did you feel the first? Like, what would be the first event you thought was like significant for you?
What do you mean, the first
Well, well,
event?
like in terms of where your life changed from the morning to the afternoon.
I would say in an emergency, in some type of disaster. I've been through earthquakes,
Yeah,
but nothing. You were there in Silmar at the
yeah, I
time
was. Yeah,
when it happened. I wasn't. I was
yeah,
in Manhattan Beach, actually, and in California. And I felt it. My parents who lived still in Silmar, and I drove to their house, and I thought, okay, this is a pretty bad earthquake. And then, but the closer I got, the more I noticed where a road that used to be like this, Glen Oaks Boulevard, now dipped
yeah,
down
yeah.
like that. markets and places were damaged. And I got to my parents' house, and my dad, who was in shock, is standing in the garage with his car about 20 feet out of the garage. And everything had fallen down, all the boxes, all the tools, everything. And I said, "Oh, Dad, thank God you got your car out." And he said, "I didn't."
Yeah,
It was the earthquake that did it. And he was in shock. He didn't know what to, it's such a mess, such a disaster, as to what do you do. The same thing would happen in the house with my mom and everything that had fallen down in the kitchen. And you're kind of just like, what do I do? How do I get over this? Which leads to the second thing, preparedness.
Right. But I think like for instance, a good example is, for me, is the Sylmar earthquake, because that happened in 1971, and it was the first earthquake in my lifetime. No one had really thought about earthquakes. It was all kind of like kind of a conceptual idea, but no one really thought about them. And then when that earthquake hit, nobody was prepared. And I say nobody, I mean not individuals, not organizations, not the government, nobody. And it was a situation where buildings collapsed, people died in those collapses. Veterans Administration Hospital there in Sylmar killed like 50 people.
Right.
Freeway overpasses collapsed.
Right.
I remember that. Collapsed. People, whole neighborhoods and whole communities without water, without electricity. And no one, and apartments just rocking over and falling over onto each other. No one was prepared for that. And as a consequence, there was a lot of shock. People were just in a stupor, or they were acting out, doing all kinds of things that weren't helpful. And I think one of the ways that you can avoid some of that is, now we know to expect these things.
Right.
Is what can we do? I mean, first step to me is accepting that if we're going to live in a beautiful place like this, there's a price, and the price is the Cascadia earthquake off the coast.
Right.
And so you and I can take steps to try and mitigate that risk. One of them is, of course, living in a small, recently built one-story house. It's all completely up to code. It's all strapped down. It's it's unlikely it's going to collapse. Highly unlikely it's going to collapse. Highly unlikely that it's going to come off its foundation, which is what happened a lot in 71.
Yeah.
And in all likelihood, no matter how bad the earthquake is, you're probably going to be able to spend the night in your house, I would expect. You're not going to have to be evacuated.
You would hope so.
Yeah.
And you would hope so, but with an earthquake, as it would be, let's take an example, the hurricane that just hit.
Yeah.
And the other one that's now coming to Florida too. Those people who are in Florida right now should be and should have been preparing of what to do. When I happened to live in Florida for 11 years, we all make mistakes, but I may have lived there for 11 years, and I learned about hurricanes when I was there and what you had to do to prepare if something's coming. Sometimes, though, with an earthquake, you can't prepare.
So let's just talk about the things we think, you and I, based on our experience in going through these disasters, some of the things that you and I have done up to this point to prepare what we probably think is going to be a pretty sizable earthquake.
Right.
So if you want, I'll go first.
You go first.
Okay. So I'm a little paranoid, and I'm but for my wife, I'd probably be living in a bunker in the desert, really. So she mitigates a lot of those tendencies in me. But still, I have graduated power supplies, so I have lots of little backup batteries. I have battery testers. I've got rechargeable flashlights, and then I've got, moving up a step, then I've got battery packs I can plug in that I can charge my phone with a few times with, and then moving up from that, I've got devices that will charge my phones quite a number of times and also jumpstart my car if I need to. And then moving up from that, I've got a huge battery pack that will run a refrigerator for 24 hours. And then above that, I've got a gasoline generator. And so that's one, and a lot of that's left over from California when we used to have pretty periodic power failures and all kinds of other things that require some of this stuff. I haven't experienced that up here, thank
What
goodness.
about food
Well,
and water?
water and food is difficult because, for instance, water, they're saying the latest FEMA advice is 1 gallon per person per day.
Right.
And so one of the things I liked about my house when I bought it was it has a 50-gallon water heater.
Mm-hmm.
And so it holds 50 gallons of water right there. So that's 25 days of water for 2 people.
Right.
And that's quite a bit of water. Then there's water in each of your toilet tanks, not the bowls, but the tanks. And then we have stored water in the way of bottles. And you need 200 and I think I calculated it was 217 bottles for a 14-day supply for one person. So you need 217 of those bottles.
I think, and we live in a community here, you do too, and I do too, where I think once you get over the initial shock and once you get over looking for damage to your house, you're going to care about your neighbors and the people around you. And I do think there will be a mentality, maybe not right away. Right away, you're going to think about taking care of yourself and your family.
Yeah.
But after that, we happen to live in a place that I think we're going to check on other people and make sure that everyone is okay.
I hope you're right. My experience says you're wrong. My experience says that at first, everyone's going to be really worried about their fellow neighbors. But as things start getting tight and people start running out of water, running out of food, electricity, it's going to be not like that. It's going to be everyone's for themselves.
Survivalistic instinct.
So. Yeah, I think so. So it behooves everyone to do what they can to be prepared. But that again goes back to my point of resilience, and that is, how do you decide? Okay, you've accepted there's going to be an earthquake. You need then to take the next mental steps. Is okay. What is it that I need to do in order to properly prepare? Mm-hmm. What am I going to have to do? And you mentioned water.
Right.
Everyone's got a certain amount of water that they've got stored, but you really do need to store a gallon of water a day. Mm-hmm. You really do need to have 14 days worth of food for 2 people.
Yes.
And you really do need to have some kind of sanitary situation, mm-hmm. because that's going to become a problem really fast.
Yeah.
And you need to have provisions for power so that you can see in the dark and so that you can charge your phones and listen to the radio for instructions. Because otherwise, the alternative is to allow yourself to be evacuated out to a local shelter of some sort. And there will be those shelters that are set up. They'll get set up pretty fast within a day or so, and you'll be given the option of going to a high school or gymnasium. Mm-hmm. But the problem with those, in my experience, is that your pets aren't going to be able to go with you.
Right.
They're going to have to go someplace else. If they're lucky, they're going to go with a volunteer who can watch out for them. Worst case scenario, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay here in your house. And so, again, you're not going to have the option of not doing anything. After an earthquake, you're going to have to do something. And you're either going to choose to make it the way you want it, to design your living situation the way you want it, or just simply be at the whim of other people who think they know better.
That's an earthquake. On a fire, I have a few suggestions. First of all, always keep a flashlight in your nightstand. Because if that happens in the middle of the night and there's no electricity and you're trying to figure out where anything is, that flashlight is invaluable. Or we actually have lanterns and we have flashlights that we can really see if we need to. The other thing we've done is we have made a list, room by room, of if we have to evacuate and get out, what do we want to take? And what do we want to grab? The one thing I didn't do when our house burned down and we were getting out so fast, my wife had a tub of her memorabilia from her childhood, and there was jewelry in there, and there were other things in there, and I just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And I just left it. And it kills me to this day that I did.
Yeah.
So make a list of every room and what you might want to take to get out.
Yeah.
And put it in order, because all of a sudden there's 8 things in a room. Well, I don't have time to grab 8. I have a time to grab 3. I'll grab these 3. At the
Yeah.
beginning of that list.
And I think that's where, again, you and I differ, because based on my experiences in the past, my wife and I, we don't have anything we're particularly
Yeah.
concerned about. We'll grab our passports, and I'll grab my wallet. My
Right.
wife will grab her purse, but
Well, that's another
everything
point.
else can just go.
Well,
If it's
that's
a
another
fire.
point.
Yeah.
I have all my important papers, passports, birth certificates, death certificates, etc., in one place. That they're not spread out all over the
Yeah.
house, that I'm going from one place
It's good.
to
Yeah.
another. Everything's in one place.
Yeah.
I grab a drawer, I throw it in the car, I'm gone.
I put everything online.
Yeah.
It's on the cloud, so
Yeah.
that I don't have to worry about it.
So now, being prepared for a disaster is really important.
Right.
And
But to go back to the point of resilience, which is, okay, so you've decided that you need to do these things.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you've decided you need to do is to get really focused on making sure that the things that you take, the things that are important to you, whatever they might be, that you are prepared, and that they are accessible, and you know what they are, and you know how to get to them, and you know how to grab them and go with them. But what about, for instance, suppose you just vanish off the grid, because of an earthquake, there's no communication, or because of a fire, and all of your stuff is gone. What about friends and relatives? How are they going to contact you?
One thing that we did, we had at that point, we had a central place that somebody could say, here is where we contact, that everybody, if there's a disaster here, or if there's a disaster here, then we contact here.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good. I have the same situation. We have a designated person in my family that everyone's supposed to call.
Yeah.
That's far enough away that they're probably not going to be affected, and they become kind of the, sort of the ringleader or the operator, or whatever, to kind of keep track of everybody's situation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, to have that.
And what about medication?
Always have. That's the thing. Have your medication when you're getting out, and you're not thinking about medication. Have some for a week. Have pills that you're taking for medication in a to-go bag that you can grab and take it with you.
Now, you have any trouble getting medication enough to have enough meds
No,
for that?
You have it with you, and if it expires, you don't have an emergency for 2-3 years, and you're getting lax, and you say, well, those pills are expired.
Yeah.
Remove them, put new pills in.
Okay, but what I mean is, like, for instance, if you're getting towards the end of your refill, and an earthquake hits, and maybe you only got a week on that refill. What are you going to do after that?
I think we're with a health plan that I know I can get pills, even if it's not here where we live. I can go somewhere else.
Okay, so like
and
CVS
get that
or something. Like that.
That's the other thing, and make sure your car is full, at least half full of gas
at all times.
At all
I
times, if it gets down to half, fill that sucker up, because if there's no gas stations open anywhere in the vicinity, which happened to us, and you've got a quarter tank or a little less, and you're trying to get out and drive 200 miles, good luck.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, half tank gives you options.
Yeah.
And of course, because I'm who I am, I also have a gas pump.
Yeah.
That goes into the gas tank.
Yeah.
Electric pump that'll pump the gas out of one car and put it in another car.
Yeah, I don't have that. I'm not that prepared.
Again, that's because of California again.
Yeah.
One of the things I encountered in California when the earthquakes hit were no credit cards, zero.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the guys in our neighborhood, one of the gas station owners, was real entrepreneurial. And he put up a siphon down into his gas tank and was selling gallons of gas for $10 a gallon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with cash. So having at least a half a tank of gas gives you options. For sure.
Absolutely. And I think, people are remiss in doing that. They wait till it gets almost to empty, and they park overnight, and then you're going, oh my God.
Yeah. And in terms of medication, I've always like called in my refills as soon as I can,
Mm-hmm.
which gives me like a week.
Yeah.
And so it adds up after a while. So I can actually build up like a month's reserve cushion.
Yeah.
I built up like a month. So I can go a month without having to call a pharmacy to get meds. So I have a
Yeah.
month's
Yeah.
worth of reserves. Because because my wife and I both take meds that we can't afford to go without. So it's important to do that.
You know, it's so important
Yeah.
to do that. And I have that. I actually have that too, that I have that reserve.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of resilience is trying to do things now that will make you feel better after the event, so that you armor yourself up, you protect yourself more. So buying insurance is important.
Yeah.
Do you have earthquake insurance?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do.
It's a lot cheaper here than it was in California.
Yeah,
that's
no
for sure.
kidding.
Yeah,
That's the truth.
yeah. So
I
that's
think
important.
I think, you know, we can talk about an emergency and when something happens. But if you don't do something about it and you just talk about it, it ain't it. You're going to have to want to really get down to it and take the steps to get ready
Right.
for that in your mind and physically too, with the things we've talked about.
Right. Also, too, you have to guard against your imagination because, everyone can imagine sort of a worst case and best case scenario. And it's kind of like you when you're laying in bed at night thinking about these things, it's worst case. Where FEMA now is saying 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You need to prepare for 2 weeks. That's minimum. That's what FEMA's saying now.
Yeah.
It used to be 3 days. Now it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're saying. But when you're out there trying to decide whether you want to spend money on an extra case of canned food, or you want to buy a generator, or you want to do some of the more pricey things, or things that take up space in your house that maybe you don't have, then you start thinking, well, best case, I just need to be prepared for a couple of days and someone will come along and rescue me.
Yeah, but that's if you're thinking, you always got to go. I'm always positive in my thought process. I always believe the glass is half full. In this case, in an emergency, I always think, what's the worst? And be prepared for the worst. And if it's the best that happens,
Yeah.
and you have a little something, hey, it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
But if you're prepared for the worst, that's the best.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of like right now, I think I've got water enough, but in terms of food, I maybe have 10 or 11 days worth of food.
I think we have plenty.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll keep that
in mind.
We bought a things. Yeah, you know where I live.
Yeah, exactly.
We bought a thing at Costco.
Oh yeah.
That is like 60 days worth of food.
One of those big tubs.
One of the big tubs.
The problem with that is it's just loaded with carbs. And
you know what? If I need to eat, the carbs aren't going to bother me.
Well, no, it's not the fat. I'm not worried about getting fat, but I'm a diabetic, and so I need to
right.
I need to be careful about some of the things that I eat.
Then in short term, if you don't have food, because it's not going to be, you're not going to do this for 3 months.
No, that's true. Let's hope not.
No. If it's a 3 months disaster, God bless us all.
I'm moving down the road to my kid's house,
yeah,
or my brother's house or something. But so I mean, I got 11 days worth of food.
Yeah,
that seems good for me right now. That's kind of like my medium paranoia. 10 or 11
well, if
days.
my barbecue's still working, you can come on over and we can barbecue some of the meat that was in the freezer.
Yeah. The other thing too is, besides planning what documents you're going to take and what medications you're going to take, you also need to be thinking about, for instance, the order of the food you're going to be eating. You want to eat your fresh food first.
Yes.
And then whatever's on the refrigerator, you want to eat that next.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever's in the freezer, eat that next. And then canned goods. So
that's a very good point.
To think that through so that you know what you're doing. So, I mean, and then if you got these things in place, you'll take it from Walter and me who've experienced this stuff. If you've got some of this armor on, you're going to be more effective. You're going to be able to not only take care of yourself, but also because you're prepared, you're going to be more comfortable about reaching out to your neighbors.
I agree. Michael, it's been great, I think. And that that's our talk for today, and we thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you.